Picture this. You just got paid. You open your bank app, you see a number that actually makes you feel okay for about 4 seconds, and then your brain starts doing what your brain always does. It starts running the math. Rent, groceries, car payment, that subscription you forgot to cancel. And by the time you're done, that feeling of being okay has completely evaporated, and you're left wondering how someone who works as hard as you do still feels like they're standing in the same place every single month. Welcome to Smart Invests. I spend way too much time thinking about money, financial psychology, and how people build wealth. If you're someone who struggles with feeling like your money disappears no matter what you do, make sure to hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if this helps you out. Here's the thing. That feeling isn't just an emotion, it's a signal, and most people respond to that signal in exactly the wrong way. There's a belief that floats around personal finance spaces that sounds reasonable on the surface, that the key to building wealth is where you put your money. Pick the right stocks, find the right ETF, get into the right asset class, and if you can do that, you'll finally be ahead. But here's what most people don't realize. The where matters far less than the when, the sequence, the order. Because you can put money in the right place at the wrong time, and it will cost you more than it ever made you. And you can put money in a less glamorous place at exactly the right moment and watch it compound into something that genuinely changes your life. That's what this video is about. Not what to invest in, but when to invest in what. Think of your financial life like a foundation. And I know, everyone uses the house analogy, but bear with me for a second because I want to go a layer deeper. When you build a foundation, you don't just pour concrete wherever you feel like it. You follow a sequence. There's an order to what goes down first. And if you skip that order, if you put up walls before the foundation is set, the whole structure is fragile, no matter how nice the walls look. The same is true with money. There is an optimal sequence for deploying your dollars, not just a good sequence, an optimal one. One where each step you take creates the conditions that make the next step more powerful. Skip a step, and you're not just missing out, you're actively working against yourself in ways that are hard to see in the moment. Let me give you a picture of what getting this wrong actually looks like. Imagine someone, let's call her Maya, who earns around $55,000 a year. Maya is reasonably good with money. She's not reckless. She reads articles about investing. She opened a brokerage account and started putting $200 a month into index funds, which honestly, most people never even get that far. But here's the thing about Maya. She's also carrying $4,800 in credit card debt at 21% interest. She doesn't have a dedicated emergency fund, just kind of hopes her credit card will cover it if something goes wrong. And her employer offers a 4% 401k match, which she's not taking advantage of because she doesn't really understand how it works. So Maya is investing, she's doing something, but she's doing it in the wrong order. And the invisible cost of that wrong order, the interest accumulating on her debt, the employer match she's forfeiting, the tax drag on her brokerage account, is quietly eating thousands of dollars a year that she'll never see and never get back. This is where it gets really interesting, because the reason most people invest in the wrong order isn't stupidity, it's psychology. There are two forces pulling at people simultaneously. The first is urgency avoidance. Debt and emergency funds feel painful to deal with. They're reminders of vulnerability. So the brain wants to look away from them, to focus on something that feels forward-looking, like putting money in the market. The second is what behavioral economists call action bias. We are wired to feel like doing something sophisticated is better than doing something boring. Opening a brokerage account and buying an ETF feels like investing. Paying down credit card debt doesn't feel like investing. It just feels like loss containment. But mathematically, paying off a 21% interest rate debt is a guaranteed 21% return. And there is no ETF in the world that will guarantee you 21%. Here's what most people don't realize. The financial system is actually well designed to exploit this exact psychology. Credit card companies know you'll find investing exciting. Brokerage platforms know you'll feel engaged picking funds. None of them benefit from you first building the boring foundation that makes everything else work, so they don't remind you to. Let's look at some actual numbers, because this is where the picture really comes into focus. Going back to Maya, she has $4,800 in credit card debt at 21% interest. If she continues making minimum payments while putting $200 a month into her brokerage account, she'll pay roughly $2,200 in interest over the next couple of years. Meanwhile, her $200 a month in the market might earn something, maybe 7% annualized, which would put her at around $5,000 after 2 years. She's coming out ahead, right? Except, no, because during those same 2 years, her employer was matching up to 4% of her $55,000 salary. That's $2,200 a year in free money, and she wasn't touching it. So she's left $4,400 in employer contributions on the table. She paid $2,200 in interest, and she made $5,000 in her brokerage. Do the math. She's actually behind. Now run the same scenario with the right order. Maya redirects that $200 a month to aggressively pay down the credit card first, gone in about 2 years. She contributes just enough to her 401k to capture the full employer match from day one. That's an immediate 100% return on that portion of her contributions. And she builds a $1,500 emergency buffer before anything else so she doesn't need to touch debt when something breaks. Same income, same time period, completely different trajectory. Here's something that doesn't get talked about enough in personal finance content. The way you deploy your money isn't just a financial decision. It shapes the way you think about yourself. When you have a real emergency fund, not credit card hope money, but actual liquid savings, something shifts in your psychology. You stop making decisions from fear, and money decisions made from fear are almost always worse than money decisions made from security. You start choosing jobs, relationships, opportunities differently when you're not operating from a place of financial fragility. When you eliminate high-interest debt, you don't just gain cash flow, you gain a kind of cognitive clarity. You stop doing the mental math on how long until you're technically okay. That's mental energy you can redirect into building instead of just surviving. And when you start actually accumulating, when the compounding starts to become visible, you begin to identify as someone who builds wealth rather than someone who just manages scarcity. That identity shift changes behavior on its own. It creates a feedback loop that no single investment can create. The reason getting this order right matters so much isn't just the dollars and cents, it's what money in the right places does to your range of options. An emergency fund doesn't just cover car repairs. It means you can walk away from a job that's making you miserable without catastrophizing. It means you negotiate differently because you have leverage. It means opportunities that require a little risk feel like opportunities instead of threats. Wealth, built in the right order, doesn't just grow your net worth. It expands the number of choices available to you. And that, honestly, is the whole point. Now, you might be thinking, this all sounds good, but I can't afford to do any of this. My income barely covers my expenses as it is. And I hear that. I'm not going to pretend that building an emergency fund is easy when you're living paycheck to paycheck. But here's the thing. If your expenses are genuinely that tight, investing in the market isn't going to fix it. The sequence works at every income level. It just takes longer at lower incomes. And the first $1,000 in an emergency fund, which you can build by putting aside even $50 a week for 5 months, will do more for your financial decision-making than any amount put into a brokerage account at the same time. The goal isn't to do everything at once. It's to do the right thing next. So what does actually doing this look like? Let's keep it simple. First, if you don't have $1,000 set aside in a savings account that you don't touch for anything other than a real emergency, that is your only financial priority right now. Everything else waits. Second, check whether your employer offers a retirement match. If they do, calculate the minimum contribution needed to capture the full match and set that up before you do anything else with discretionary income. This is not optional. It is the highest return move available to most people. Third, list your debts by interest rate. Anything above 8 to 10% annually, and credit cards are almost always well above that, gets attacked aggressively before additional investing. Pay minimums on everything else, throw every available dollar at the highest rate first. Fourth, once the high-interest debt is cleared, start building your emergency fund from that temporary $1,000 buffer up to 3 months of actual living expenses. Put it in a high-yield savings account where it earns something while it waits. And fifth, only after all of that, start thinking seriously about tax-advantaged accounts, maxing your IRA, contributing more to your 401k, exploring an HSA if you're eligible, then taxable brokerage accounts, in that order. The version of you reading this a few years from now, the one who actually followed the sequence, who did the boring work in the right order, that person is going to look back at this moment as one of the clearest decisions they ever made. Not because they picked a great stock, not because they timed the market, but because they understood that building wealth is a system, and systems have an order. And respecting that order is what separates people who feel like they're always catching up from people who quietly, steadily pull ahead. Do the boring thing next. Your future self will thank you for it. If this helped clarify something you've been confused about, hit the thumbs up. It genuinely helps the channel. Subscribe if you want more content like this, and I'll see you in the next one.